Microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, that guy, how can that be possible? The brain, final slap of choice. I don't know when that was. Doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter whether a cartoon comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just read two together. Whenever I try to prove out, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the Ochelli Effect.
Because I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for...
That's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is that. It is Saturday Night Live on the Ochelli Effect, which is broadcast live on UCY.TV radio. Find it in case you're listening to this later on an MP3 or something at UCY.TV/TOE. Anyway, boy, it has been a long week, at least for me. And it's just been interesting. I want to apologize to everybody for the other night because on Thursday I was just very, very out of it. I had one of them was wonderful migraine headaches that's brought on by my visual situation. But tonight we're going to delve into other things. That night I was just talking news and articles and probably scrambling and tripping over my own tongue way more than usual. But hey, what are you going to do? As soon as I can get him, because I'm trying to contact him now, and I'm not sure what's what, but trying to get Daniel Louis Crumpton on, and we're going to talk about a few interesting things if I can get him. Daniel, are you there?
I am here, Chuck. How art thou?
I'm questionable at best, brother, but how are you?
As they say in the military, upright and mobile.
Oh, nice. Very good. Well, I am still breathing, so I guess complaints are out of line, right? I was just in the middle of saying that I apologize to everybody for Thursday night because I was just really, really crippled by a migraine headache, but did the broadcast anyway. Probably not one of my best. But tonight we're going to get into something, and I'm going to get away from the whole news thing a little bit, but we might actually bring in some current events here too, right?
Man, you never know where it's going to go with us.
That's true. That's true. And everybody, of course, Daniel Louis Crumpton is an editor and writer at zeninthecar.com. That's all one word, zeninthecar.com. And, of course, is also the author of Then Came the Flood, which you can find on Amazon. And also, if you go to zeninthecar.com, there's plenty of easy links there if you want to check out the book. And very, very fascinating. I think an even better spoken word kind of guy than a writer in some cases, to be honest with you. But because, you're sort of limited when you're writing with your voice, but your voice is so interesting when you're speaking, sir, that it just captures the attention even more. I think you're definitely going to have to read your own audiobooks for sure, because just the way that you put things, and plus, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It's just one of those things, and I digress as usual, everybody. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in, of course. Anybody who's at the UCY page, or if you've gone and gotten us on the TuneIn app or the iTunes thing or whatever else it is, thanks. Appreciate it. And, please spread the word about the Ochelli Effect and UCY.tv, because it's a hell of an interesting mix of things, both on my show and on this network. Okay. Now, I know that our conversation sort of started off, very, very general, and of course that's what I always do, because I never script these things. I never go from anything that's pre-prepared, pre-packaged, I should say, for my show. We just sort of let things fly organically. But I know that you wanted to start discussing reincarnation, which of course is a fascinating subject to me. And I have my own beliefs, of course. I'm sure they're a little bit different than yours, but I'm willing to bet that I'm going to learn a little something as you tell me a story that I've kind of held you off on telling me off the air, because I want to hear it for the first time here. So,
well, first, let me. I wanted to go ahead and apologize to you for Thursday. Something came up and I couldn't get on the show. Well, I wanted to apologize to you and your audience. And it's kind of funny, Chuck. I never really thought about it myself, but since I have been doing radio interviews and marketing the novel, a lot of people are telling me that my voice is a little hypnotic. So I'm not going to try to take advantage of that, but I will tell all of your listeners to please go to zoomthecard.com and purchase a copy of Then Came the Flood by myself.
I like that. Nice and smooth. But since it does work, we'll just happen to say and suggest that you might. Yeah, okay, that's cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I wish I was as hypnotic and soothing as you, sir. I'm just not. I'm just abrasive and annoying, apparently.
You don't give yourself enough credit, Chuck. You really, really don't. You do a great thing, man. You really do.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and as long as I have one person that likes me, I'll keep doing this. So, anyway,
so yeah, our discussion started off with. A lot of people who follow my Facebook page, they always message me and they say, you have very cryptic posts that you put up. I'm a fan of Carl Jung. Are you familiar with Carl Jung?
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Man and His Symbols. Excellent book. And so, yeah, I do speak a little cryptically sometimes, but a lot of people have been messaging me about this whole Holy Grail thing that's been on my Facebook page and ties in with reincarnation. And, since me and you kind of mentioned it, I've been trying to put the story in my head in a way that won't sound completely insane.
Well, let me flip this for the audience really quick. I all of a sudden see, for a little while there, I didn't see you around pretty much on social media or anywhere else. You kind of dropped away there, and it was after I'd done a radio show with you on a different network, and you had sort of just, I don't know, seemed to be out of circulation, I would say. We were going to have a little roundtable thing with all the guys from Zen in the Car, and that didn't come together, and the next thing I knew, you sort of disappeared. So I didn't know what happened, and then the next thing is maybe about a week or 10 days later, I think, I see on your Facebook page exactly that I have actually something to the effect of, I have found the Holy Grail. You know those stories we have always talked about? Well, there it is. And I went, okay, there must be a follow-up to this. And then there was some other cryptic stuff after that. And I went, okay. And yeah, you are one of the few people. I mean, I get constant, notifications from people on Facebook, and I'll tell you the truth, if I read, 1 out of every 20, it's amazing at this point. But there are a few people that when I see their name on the notifications, I do tend to pay a little more attention than others, let's just say. And you're one of those people. So I go to that, and I'm like, okay, this is cryptic. And then there's another message following that, which was also cryptic. But, when you say that you found the Holy Grail or you've had an experience with the Holy Grail, that opens up a whole lot of possibilities. The Holy Grail, quite literally the Holy Grail story, I'm sure everybody knows that, I don't have to recap it. But, so many people have utilized that terminology to explain a great many of these sort of idealistic things that one wishes to reach for, that one wishes to attain for a greater purpose, for a higher purpose. Some people that collect certain items would say, well, this is the Holy Grail of the type of thing that I collect. This is the Holy Grail of these experiences. So it's, it's just one of those things that to me is used so often that it could really mean a whole lot of different things. I mean, obviously, for one guy, a comic book could be a holy grail, and that's great, man, if it gives you that kind of pleasure and it raises you up, and that's wonderful, no problems there. But at the same time, when you said it, I said to myself, there's got to be more to it, because I know that Daniel doesn't think of things in a simplistic way. He's not a materialistic guy, so it wasn't a golden goblet, which is often pictured. It was something...
But there is a picture of me holding a golden goblet, as a matter of fact.
But there is, right? So
Yeah.
that's the funny thing. That's what I was going to say next. So there is a picture of that, and it was like, what is going on here? So but I didn't want to hear about it off the air, because I knew it would be one of those fascinating discussions that would definitely enlighten at least somebody listening to us. So sorry, I totally interrupted and derailed what you were saying, but I wanted to kind of set that up for everybody.
No, you're on course, man. You're on course. And what does that have to do with reincarnation, the Holy Grail? These are questions that people were asking me. I don't know how to, and like before I came on the show, I'm trying to figure out how I can narrate this to connect dots, and it's going to be very, very personal, a lot of my own personal details. But the hopes of me telling this story is that so other people will be able to start seeing the synchronicity in their own lives, and start to connect the dots that I had to connect to find my personal Holy Grail. But how we need to talk about reincarnation and kind of lay some foundation work first to really understand where this is going to go. And a disclaimer: anybody who happens to be listening that is not into the metaphysical, that is not into spirituality, you might want to tune out. That's all I really have to say, because that's where this is going to go. It's going to go to some crazy places, I think. But give me your understanding of reincarnation, and what we can kind of go from there and do a yin yang type of thing.
Well, I mean, reincarnation is also a very wide open sort of term. There are literal systems of what is generally called reincarnation within certain religious faiths. There is the rebirth aspect, which allows someone to literally reincarnate. There are the concepts of, like, among Hindus and things, where they come back in various forms. Depending on what they have achieved, during their lifetime and that kind of thing. There are the concepts of reincarnation, which involve the disruption of a soul from one place, then finding itself somewhere else, and therefore not necessarily being reborn, but being relocated. And then there's the concept of the continuous reincarnation, which is in a lot of different faiths, which are not necessarily the most mainstream, where, although we all return to the source at one point, we also get to return here sometimes as well, and in that way you have some souls that have maybe visited this plane of existence a whole lot more times than others. So reincarnation is a really wide open sort of term. A lot of people had said to me at one point, and this is really strange during part of my spiritual journey, that I was the reincarnation of a few different interesting characters in history.
Such as?
One that came up among psychics that I don't find all that reliable or anything, but it was kind of strange that people that had no knowledge of each other had thought that part of my spirit came from Jim Morrison, believe it or not.
I could throw down with that, yeah.
And but that I wasn't wholly Jim's spirit returning, but that I had a piece of him with me. And that was kind of odd. And like I said, when somebody in New York and somebody in New Jersey and somebody in Pennsylvania who probably had not crossed paths in before the days of the internet, when somebody could instantly share these ideas and things, identify me all as the same, well, it was kind of interesting, because the first one, I think it was because with the beard and everything and with my hair at the medium length, I kind of resembled Jim at that point where he was with the beard, the not so young, sexy looking Jim, but the, kind of gotten overweight and overgrown and sort of ratty looking Jim Morrison. So it could have easily been cued by that. But the fact that it was repeated another 2 times by individuals with years in between, I found it almost like a possibility.
Right.
But that's the only really odd reincarnation story I have for myself. I mean, I do think though that my newborn is definitely a soul who's been here before and one that I've known. I just say that because of the presence he has and the expressions and the looks and the way he seems to look over people's shoulders at spaces in a room that are not necessarily occupied by anything that we can easily see. Right. So I somehow think that he's got a greater connection to these sort of things than I do. But anyway, I've gone off again on 2 different paths. But
no, you're right there where I want to go. If the words are the most important thing. We have to understand words, and the word reincarnate. I mean, what does carne mean? It means the flesh. Mm-hmm. Re means again, to take up the flesh again. Most of your world religions or faiths, perhaps is a better word, entertain this notion of some type of reincarnation or the taking back up of the body, or a body, or the biggest opponents to this is organized Christianity. They have this concept of, okay, you only live once, because there's a passage in the Bible that says it is appointed unto man once to die, and then comes the judgment. And they have this dogma and doctrine of heaven and hell. Either you go to heaven or you go to hell. So to the way that they believe, their belief structure is kind of antagonistic to the idea of Christianity. I mean, of reincarnation, excuse me. But me as a Christian Sophian Helionostic, which is not a religion, it's the opposite of a religion. It's spiritual, not religious, which, we don't convert. We certainly don't go on holy wars, but we base our spirituality off of firsthand experiential knowledge, and how can you tell somebody else that their firsthand experiential knowledge is not true? Because they experience it, they would know. But whenever I do talk to Orthodox Christians who are opposed to the notion of reincarnation, the few points that I do point out is that the Bible actually teaches reincarnation in several different places.
Well, you see, now that's why I didn't say that, because, okay, the generally accepted notion in most mainstream Christianity is that reincarnation is not part of their belief system. But this is, again, another case where they're not reading their own text, because more than one...
It's not that they're not reading it, Chuck. What it is they're having it interpreted for them by somebody behind a pulpit. They're not reading it for themselves and interpreting it for themselves. They're having somebody say, okay, this is what this means, then they believe it.
That's right. I should have made that clear, that they're not reading it for themselves instead of just not reading it, because they're allowing someone else to tell them what's in the book. I mean, it's sort of like, this was the thing. With anything in this world, when I read something about it or I hear something about it, if it actually is something important to me, I generally try to investigate it, which is usually why I'm such a jerk, because I'm exactly the guy, people say, well, this is the way this really works, you got to understand, this is the facts. And I go, okay, and if it's something that I'm interested in, I go, let me check those facts and see if that's actually right. Was this person that you're getting this story that says they were present at a particular event, were they actually there? Is there any proof to the contrary? Did they have some reason to say what they were saying outside of just witnessing it? And like I said, sometimes when you do this, you find that people that claim things and people that make astonishing, commentaries about situations and things really are doing it because they're repeating someone else's story and not their own, and stuff like this happens.
Yeah.
Now, of course, religion is rife with this in the organized sense, because, as you pointed out, too many people accept what's being said from the pulpit or what's being said from the, whatever it is you want to call it, those who are the priests among us, and we could get into the definition of the word priest anyway. Yeah. But the thing is, they accept these words without ever checking the text, without truly checking the intent and the language of what it is that these people are interpreting, generally speaking. And that's the funny part, is that if you read, the Bible as it stands, you'll find plenty of evidence for reincarnation being told to you happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's just one of those things where I go, well, it's just against, the evidence even in your own system is preaching against what it is you're telling us your system believes.
Right.
And I know that sounds like a real simplistic way to break it down, but I mean, it's true.
And then they call you a heretic and a smartass. And what's funny about it is the Gnostics, when the Roman Catholic Church came about, the Gnostics were actually, they used to be called the Telestae, or the Telestai. And they were the knowers. And when this structure, the Roman Empire, a political structure, started to forge into a spiritual entity, the Telestai came forward, and they said, no, you guys are telling lies to control the minds of men. And so it was like a slur that the Roman Catholics at the time would call the Telestai Gnostics, which, if you get back to the root word, John Lamb talks about this a lot, it means smart-ass know-it-all. Somebody who goes and checks the facts for themselves. So the Gnostics just kind of took that and adopted it as, oh yeah, okay, well, we're smart ass know-it-alls. All right, well, we'll tell you how it really is.
Well, and the fun part about this is that, of course, the Gnostic faith, as it could be represented here, actually predates Christianity as a whole anyway.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that Gnosticism is an offshoot of the Christian church.
No.
And it's not. It's and it was an evolving process that didn't really involve, the Christian narrative at all to begin with, historically speaking. I mean, we could argue about the evolution, but there is definitely evidence that there is no way that it could have been part of Christianity as it is. At one point or another. Now, they seem to have been exploratory, in their evolution regarding, what they found and everything else, but they start out with a completely different basis of faith than does the Christian church as it stands, right?
Well, if you really wanted to be honest and look at the Gnostic Gospels, the person who we call Jesus Christ, I call him Yeshua. That's just my preference. I don't think it really matters. But I prefer Yeshua. The historical figure, Yeshua, was a Gnostic. He was teaching Gnosticism. He was not a Christian. He was a Gnostic. He had studied the Hindu faith. He had studied the Buddhist faith. We have evidence that in between, one of the things that my dad would always talk about was, son, where was Jesus went from 12 to 30? Where was he at? And the Bible's kind of blank on that. Mm-hmm. The Gnostic Gospels tell you, and other documents tell you, he was traveling the world, and he was studying the world's faiths, the world's religions. He was studying Hinduism and yoga and tantric breathing. He was studying with the Druids in Ireland and in England. And there are reports from all over the world that this man and his mother and father and his brothers and sisters appeared, in England and Ireland, in Kashmir, in Nepal, and there's actually, in the Library of Kashmir, there's actually documentation. He went by several different names. The Kabbalah people have to understand that scriptures are like a lock and a key. There's always a lock and a key. The Old Testament will say is the lock, and the Kabbalah is the key to unlock it, and you have to read those together. With the New Testament, you have the Gospels. That's the lock. But then you have the Gnostic Gospels, which unfurl it like a flower. But in the Library of Kashmir, we have documentation that a man named Issa, who fits the description of the historical Jesus or Yeshua, appeared there. It was the same thing that was going on in Israel. You had a religious priest class that were controlling people and society and politics through organized religion. And this man studied their scriptures and started to teach them that they were being mind controlled. And basically...
And that speaks to, that speaks to the fact that what is generally accepted is that Yeshua or Jesus historically was supposed to be a rabbi and therefore was a Jew. This is part of the thing that's said. Now, maybe he was born into that faith, or maybe the individual didn't necessarily exist, but this is a conglomeration of more than one person that was sort of compiled together to create this narrative. Mm-hmm. And these things, obviously, you and I could go over the different evidence for these types of discussions as well. But let's just accept for the moment that there was this individual, and he would be called by different names because at that time, names were not the markers of identity that they are now. Individuals would often be named for their actions. Things like that occurred. You were most often identifiable as the son of your father or as the offspring of someone. Thusly, this is a different sort of time period. So there's all different reasons why this could have been sort of changed in the historical record, let's just say. But back to the way that it comes down through this particular place you're talking about. Go ahead. We do have documentation that he was in Hindu lands and studied their faith and was doing the same thing. The documents that are in the Library of Kashmir said this happened right before he shows up in Israel. Mm-hmm. And basically he started a revolution, and the priest class of the Hindu faith that had corrupted the Hindu faith they tried to have him assassinated, and his disciples there ushered him out. Now, if you look at the time frame of those documents, and then you compare it to the New Testament, that happened right before he pops back up in Israel and starts his ministry there. So, what he was doing was he was doing the same thing that Buddha did 500 years before. Buddha was seeking enlightenment, and at the time the major religion in Nepal was Brahmanism, and had this caste system and things of that nature. And Buddha wanted to answer the ultimate question of why is there suffering in the world. So he went on his spiritual journey, and he studied all the faiths that he could possibly come in contact with, and took bits and pieces of them. And then from those bits and pieces, he didn't quite get the fulfillment or the answer he was looking for, and he sat underneath the Bodhi tree for 40 days and 40 nights. Does that sound familiar? 40 days and 40 nights. What's interesting about the concept of suffering is that according to some accounts that I understand of like the Gnostic faith, the idea of creation is different too, mm-hmm. and therefore. See, now I'm going to try and break this down, and I know it's not going to come across very scholarly, but the concept of creation is that there was a different entity that created this world that we live in, that it wasn't created by God, necessarily the key overall God, but was created by sort of a secondary God that happens to be kind of insane. And therefore, this is why the world is unbalanced. This is why suffering. This was their answer to why there was suffering in a world that was created by God, is that God had not actually created it. A cast-aside sort of angelic entity, mm-hmm. Which had been pushed out into the universe, thought it was all by itself, and thusly created this world. And I know that's a really, really butchered way to put what it is they believe, and I apologize, but that's about as quick as I can break it down. That's sort of their explanation for why, if the good God created the world, there is so much bad in it. So therefore, they sort of have a different view on that. It's not that the one particular God, and also notice there's not one particular nearly omnipotent being either. There's actually sort of a push against a monotheistic way there, because there are other great powers in the universe. There may be like one boss god in a way, but there seems to be multiple gods even in the earlier forms of the Gnostic understanding anyway.
Well, the thing with Gnostics, and that has to be understood about what I'm saying, is that there's no set doctrine and no set dogma. So I'm not speaking for every person that identifies himself as a Gnostic, and there are different sects. I'm what's called a Sophian Gnostic, and basically what Gnostics do is they operate their spiritual life based off of what they firsthand knew. So if I'm a Gnostic and you're a Gnostic, and I've read more books than you, so I firsthand gained that knowledge, and I have an interpretation of something. It may be different from yours, but I'm not going to look at you and say you're wrong or burn you at the stake. But typically, generally, what Gnostics believe about creation is that in Genesis chapter 1, when it says God created, and it's funny you brought that up because I was having a conversation about that earlier today. In Genesis chapter 1, when it says God created the heavens and the earth, the word is Elohim in Hebrew.
Right.
And if you ask Hebrew scholars, they will tell you that the word Elohim is plural, and it includes female. So it's not a singular God, a monotheistic God. It's, if you were to read it in Hebrew, it says the gods, plural.
Right, that's the specific mention right there, is that Elohim does refer to not only more than one God, but it actually does encompass the female aspect, which of course the more modern Christian faiths completely redacted from, but they couldn't get rid of all the language, you see, not in the original text, so they still have Elohim, which is exactly as you describe it, right?
Yeah, there's a feminine. And according to Sophian Gnostics, if you read the Pista Sophia, the Gospels of the Gnostic Gospels and the Pista Sophia, it talks about this council of the gods who should be differentiated from the God that shows up later when everything goes kind of sour with the garden. That word is not Elohim. That word is Jehovah or Yahweh, and that is singular. Okay, so now we have to marry the idea that there is one supreme God. The Hindus would call him Brahma, or Brahma. Okay, and according to them, it says that Brahma is light, and that we are all clay jars, and the purpose of enlightenment is to break the jar to make the light explode. But so you have, if you were to read it in Hebrew in Genesis 1, you have the council of the gods doing creation. Then when everything goes sour, it's this singular God, Yahweh, which is actually a god of war. It's Ares. It's Mars when you start to connect it. And this is the one that says, look, the Bible says that God does not change. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But how are you going to have this one guy who calls himself God, or an entity that calls itself God, and gives 10 commandments that says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. And then whenever it's time to go take the Holy Land, he says, kill everybody. Kids, women, kill them all. The land's inhabited, so this other entity is saying, "Go kill and steal." That's a contradiction. So you're going to have to reconcile that in your mind. It's either the same God and he's a liar and a lunatic, or you're talking about two different entities. Period.
Well, see, that's again a good explanation for what happens with the Gnostics, because, like I said, and the particular entity that supposedly created this world, I can't recall its name, but I do know that that in addition to that major difference there, that there's not a monotheistic kind of theme here, that there is also sort of lacking from it the concept of the devil, the Satan, which is not part of the original Gnostic belief system at all, which is also remarkable.
No, not in that sense. But and another concept, just hold that thought, because I'll get to that. But there's something I really wanted to say. Okay. So. A concept that we also have to kind of get over in our heads, and this will tie back into reincarnation of the Holy Grail, I promise you, Chuck. But in the Old Testament, it talks about King Saul going to the witch of Endor. And, she asked him some questions, and basically it says that she saw gods, plural, ascending and descending, right? And in the New Testament, Yeshua even says, ye are gods.
Right.
So Yeshua was teaching a multiplicity of quote-unquote gods. Now, it's language, it's semantics, but to a human being, let's say an angel, an archangel, a seraphim, a cherubim, these would appear to be gods. I mean, They have more, that doesn't mean that it's the supreme God, but it's like gods with a little g. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But as far as Lucifer goes, no, there's a different interpretation of Satan. Satan means the adversary. It means, he who pushes against. Okay, Satan. Well, getting back to Buddhism, whenever Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree for 40 days and 40 nights, it says that, the Satan, and the language is a little bit different, but the concept is the same. When he almost reached enlightenment, the Satan appeared to him and tempted him 3 times. All right, this is 500 years before the Bible, before the New Testament. Mm-hmm. The first temptation was he threw fiery darts at him to try to scare him away from the path of enlightenment. And Buddha just, he kind of waved his hand and was at peace, and they turned to lotus flowers and fell at his feet. And then the second temptation was the Satan brought his beautiful daughters to tempt him through the flesh. And then Buddha, refrained from that. And then they turned to these wicked, hideous women that were trying to humiliate him. And then after the 3 temptations, Buddha realized that the Satan that was tempting him off the path was his own shortcomings. And then at that moment, he made the connection in his mind that the Satan was himself. It was his ego. It was his darker half. So at that moment, it says that he reached nirvana. He escaped samsara, and he reached nirvana and realized that every one of us has a personal Satan, and it's us, okay? Now, that's, whenever you get to Yeshua or Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, it's the same story. Who was Yeshua talking to? His own darker half, his own dark nature. Now, when you get to Hinduism, there's the story of Krishna. And Krishna literally means Christ. That's what it means. Mm-hmm. Born of a virgin, walked on water, fed the 5,000, all that. But in Hinduism, Krishna was a great spiritual teacher, but he was still mortal in a certain sense. And his the goddess, the feminine aspect of quote unquote God or Brahma, was called Kali Ma, the nurturing mother. And she looked down upon Krishna, and she's like, well, I got to get away. I have to find a way to get him to what's called apothesize, which ties into George. If you've ever seen the paintings on the Capitol Dome of the apotheosis of George Washington, I've got to get him to figure out a way to become a god, is literally what Hinduism teaches. So it says that she incarnates into the material world, and she becomes Kali, which means trouble. And she has 7 severed heads around her belt, and essentially she puts her foot on Krishna's throat. And the throat represents speech, it represents communication, and things like that. She was putting pressure on it. Right. And the point of her adding that resistance, that friction, was that he was supposed to look at the severed heads. 7, the number 7 is key. You have 7 virgins in the Bible, 7 seals, 7 chakras. The number 7 is the number of divine intervention.
7 heads, 7 kingdoms. The beast has 7 heads. All that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if he tries to forcibly move Kali, she cuts him with a knife. But when he goes inside himself, like the Oracle of Delphi said, "Man, know thyself, and you will know the worlds and their gods." When he does that, and he realizes that what the 7 heads represent are his 7 vices, the 7 vices, and he is to turn them into virtues. Once he does that, Kali turns into Kali Ma, the nurturing mother, and she lifts Krishna up, and he becomes Shiva, the destroyer of worlds. He becomes a god, and him and his immortal beloved, so to speak, basically, go off into eternal bliss, creating universes together. And
it's also where the 7 deadly sins come in as well.
Exactly, exactly. It represents the 7 chakras, and internal alchemy, things like that. But if you ever look at a picture of Shiva doing the Raza dance, it's people have seen it. Probably he's doing a dance, and in one hand he has a drum, and in the other hand he has his tongue that's on fire. And according to Hinduism, says that he will rattle the drum and create a universe, and it'll go for a certain cycle, and then he'll destroy it with the fiery tongue. Well, when you get to the book of Revelation and it talks about the second coming of Christ, in the beginning in Genesis it says, how did he create the universe? Through through vibration. And I would urge anybody to look up Semetics and look at some YouTube videos about Semetics and how sound and vibration can create these patterns and things. But that's what the book of Revelation says, is that whenever that cycle has been destroyed, Yeshua or Jesus comes back with a flaming sword from his mouth. It's the same imagery of Shiva destroying a world.
Right.
So all these things are interrelated. And how that ties back into reincarnation is, we said that Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, is the biggest enemy of the notion of reincarnation. But there's so many things in the Old Testament and the New, and one of them is, according to the prophecies of the Messiah, there can only be one king, and there can be one high priest. You can't be a king and a priest, essentially, is what the Old Testament says. You're either a king, or you're of the Davidic line, or the royal line, or you're a priest. You can't be both. Only one person can hold that, and that has to be the Messiah. Well, in the Old Testament, Abraham comes back from what's called the slaughter of the kings. They basically abducted his nephew, and him and some guys went in there and they did their thing, and got the nephew back. And it says that after the slaughter of the kings, this dude walks up, and his name is Melchizedek. And this is way before the New Testament. And Melchizedek, it says that he was the king and priest of Salem, which later would be Jerusalem. And Abraham basically worshipped the guy and gave him tithes and offerings. Mm-hmm. So whenever the New Testament pops up, Yeshua or Jesus is supposed to be the king priest. But there was already a guy that had that role. So either you have a contradiction in the Bible, Orthodox Christians, or reincarnation is a fact. And the same spirit that was in Melchizedek put one body down, and then centuries later picked up another one.
Right.
So that's huge evidence for reincarnation in the Bible. But in the New Testament, even further evidence of reincarnation is whenever Mary and Elizabeth got together, they were both pregnant with John the Baptist and Yeshua. The babies jumped in the womb, right? Because they knew each other. Well, later at the baptism of Yeshua, he was baptized by John the Baptist, and all the rabbis, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they wanted to know that, if you're the Messiah, if you're the chosen guy, isn't Elijah and Elisha supposed to show up first? And he said, if you can bear it, and he pointed to John the Baptist. He said, that is Elijah. That's him. Okay? That's further evidence of reincarnation in the New Testament.
Right, and this is symbolized in Da Vinci's famous painting of the two babies and all that. Mm-hmm. Where they're reaching out to one another, and the positioning of each one showing that one had come out first. Actually, if you really break down the artwork, there was a lot to be said in the old artwork. It wasn't just a random expression. That's for certain. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and it's odd because all that stuff was commissioned by the church. So it's not as though the new church is not aware of what came before it.
Right.
So, anyway.
But yeah, further evidence of it is, there was a guy who was born blind from birth, and the disciples and Yeshua are walking, and they ask him, they say, Lord, was this guy born blind because of his own sin or his parents' sin? Now, wait a second. These are Orthodox Jews. They knew that this guy begged daily. They knew that he was born blind. Now, if he was born blind, why would they even bother to ask a question? Stated, was he born blind because of his own sin? What sin did you commit in your mother's womb? So these Orthodox Jews had an understanding that could have been past life karma. Now, this was a perfect opportunity. Yeshua could have turned to him and said, whoa, you guys are talking about reincarnation. Let's get this straight. No, there's no such thing. But he didn't do that. He said, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll tell you something else strange about that it brings to mind is that, I know that it says in the text that, the sins of the father should not be visited upon the son, right? This is something that is a cornerstone of the belief system. But then again, how does that explain the concept of all of us being punished essentially for Eve and Adam doing what they did? The concept of original sin is sort of thrown into question, isn't it?
The way that original sin is taught in Orthodox churches, to me, is complete It's, I don't even want to use an expletive, but it has entrapped so many people. In Gnosticism, basically, knowledge is a way to attain experience and contact with the divine. So for us, what sin is ignorance, because if you think about it, everything bad that ever happens is based out of ignorance. You know, if you understand the concept that Hinduism teaches, which is namaste, which is the divinity in me bows to the divinity in you, and you realize that when you steal from somebody else, you're really stealing from yourself. When you kill somebody else, you're really killing yourself. When you slight anybody else, you're really slighting yourself. Now, if you don't know that, if you don't have that knowledge, you will commit quote-unquote sin. So in Gnosticism, sin literally is ignorance. It's not having knowledge. And with ignorance, you do stupid stuff, and people get hurt and things get broken.
You see, and that's the thing, is that, you know, among people like yourself and me, although you and I don't have exactly the same belief system, we do share a very serious common link, which is that since we are all interconnected, to injure your brother, maliciously is to injure yourself, because we are all part of the same thing. This is something that I know. You know, I may not be wording it exactly the way you would, but this is how my belief system is anyway. You know, and it seems as though this was a little too complex to be taught to some, you know, in the Orthodox Christian Church, the way it is, because they teach you a different separate. There's a big separation. There's always a partition between the self and the others. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, like, and I know people who are in the Orthodox Church that they don't like some of the language I use, and like I'll say karma, you know, and they go, "What do you mean by karma?" I go, "Well, it's in the Bible. It's you reap what you sow." And they go, "Why don't you just say you reap what you sow?" No, it's the same thing. Where are you getting all, you know? Why are you anal about it? It means the same thing. You reap what you sow.
Right.
But it, you know, and I would urge people to look up Jordan Maxwell. He does great stuff on words with organized religion, and how you can. If I were to grab you, Chuck, and this is how it happens. Typically in the Orthodox Church, they traumatize you. They scare the living hell out of you, and tell you, look, if you don't believe what we're telling you in the way that we tell you, you are going to go to this fiery pit, and you're going to burn forever. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now you're afraid. They have you in trauma. You're totally afraid. So now you are at their mercy. So now they're going to grab you and take you up, and here's the Bible. You know, we're going to teach you the Bible, and you've never read it before. So you come across, you know, Elizabethan words, and you don't understand it, and so you go to these people who you trusted because they scared the shit out of you. And you say, what does this word mean? Okay, well, if I take you and I go, okay, what does the word sin mean? Oh, it means potato chips. Now, because I have defined that word for you, you will read the Bible with a completely different interpretation than what's intended. And you will believe that Jesus Christ came to save you from potato chips.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. And I'll tell you something else. The reason why I rejected the church in general when I was a child was because it was sort of like this. I realized very early on that not only were they teaching me the lessons in the book, but they were also trying to teach me how to interpret the world. And it didn't necessarily line up with the lessons in the world. It was sort of like it was okay to... how do I put this? It was okay to fear those that were sinning, although Jesus didn't. You know what I mean? It was you keep yourself away from those. You don't necessarily, you may try to save some of them, but only if you're a missionary, and you don't try and save certain people. But it seemed to me as though, the Christ story as I understood it, and if you were to try and walk his path, essentially, you would wish to save everybody, pretty much. You wouldn't let anybody fall by the wayside. And the thing was, there was these heavy judgments, within the church or within the church hierarchies that I noticed as a child. I mean, this is the way I interpreted it. And I know it's a little bit off base, but you can see how I sort of saw it that way, right?
Yeah, and one of the things, and I'm glad you brought that up. It just brought something to my mind. One of the most profound passages in the Bible regarding reincarnation is the Bible. Now, you have to understand the mindset of Orthodox Christians. They believe that every word is literal. Okay, they don't approach it from an allegory, an allegorical sense. They believe every word is literal, and there can be no contradictions in the Bible. I believe that. I believe that there are no contradictions. But when I do come across something that appears to be a contradiction, it's my job to reconcile it with the rest of the book. And one of the passages from the New Testament says, Yeshua says, if I be lifted up, okay, and he was referring to, being crucified. If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. He doesn't say some. He doesn't say those who say a particular prayer, those who bow before an altar or do rosary beads or whatever. He says, if I be lifted up, I will draw all, A-L-L, all men unto me. So, that being said, and no contradictions, how can people go to hell? So, that being said, the only way logically out of that quote-unquote contradiction is reincarnation has to be a fact. It has to be a fact. If they don't get it right, whatever it is, whatever lessons that they're supposed to learn, if they don't get it right, they got to come back and do it again, And that's how you reconcile that. Now, for Christians, Orthodox Christians, what you have to ask them is, well, was he lifted up? And the answer is yeah. So, reincarnation has to be a fact. Or all of it's for naught.
Well, absolutely, and then of course, just following, what is. I mean, obviously, he dies and is resurrected. Mm-hmm. So resurrection is also another way to look at reincarnation as well, because the spirit has left the body, and then the spirit has to re-enter the body. Yeah. So just believing, in fact, that but then the argument is, of course, that since he was also God and also a divinity, that this is why this happens. It doesn't happen for the rest of us because we are not the same.
Actually, if you're going to run with their dogma, what do they believe? Orthodox Christians in America, anyway, what do they believe? They believe that if you die, in Thessalonians it talks about those that sleep in the Lord will one day be raised and given a new body. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Christians believe in an ultimate resurrection of all the people who are dead, and even those who believe in a rapture get a brand new body. That's reincarnation. That's your essence, your spirit, your soul, your memories going back into a different or even the same flesh. That's reincarnation.
Oh, so, that was my point about that, is that it really is irrelevant whether, he comes back in the body of a dog or he comes back in the body of a man. The fact is, it is still the return to flesh, and therefore, reincarnation. And even if he is to return into his own corpse, which, the old joke, of course, used to be that, that Jesus was the first zombie. But I know that that's kind of sophomoric, but I can't help it. But the thing is, literally, what we're saying is that he goes away and then he comes back to his own body. So that's reincarnation right there. Yeah. And and there's no contradiction in that. So I mean, if you're going to believe in this system, it is all over the place. The evidence that. If this is true, and if these stories are true, and if these prophecies are true, and if these, like the explanation of the rapture and all that, if all of this is true, then reincarnation is a literal staple of the belief system, not an antithetical point at all. Right.
And now we're about to get up on the 9 o'clock hour, so I'm trying to see where we're at and what I can fit in, but let's look at it from a scientific point of view. Okay. We've looked at it from a spiritual point of view, and it's been a long time since I played video games. I used to be a junkie, but there's a game I know everybody knows it. It's called Assassin's Creed. Mm-hmm. Okay, Assassin's Creed, and there's so much profound science in that video game. That it blew my mind whenever I played through it, but it talks about genetic memory. This is a very big contributing factor to reincarnation and people who, quote-unquote, remember their past lives. Okay, we know for a fact I forget what the breed is, but there's a breed of birds that when they fly south for the winter, there's a particular area over the Atlantic or the Pacific or whatever ocean that they circle around for a while, and then they continue on their journey, but they kind of circle around it for a while. And scientists have looked at that, and they were like, why do they do that? We don't understand why they do that. Well, if you go back, 6,000 years, there was land there. And these birds, in their genetic DNA, remember that. They have genetic memory. And, our DNA is like a binary code. For example, me and you, we are the product of a man and a woman. And the DNA of those two people came together and formed us.
Right.
And extrapolate that back out, okay? Which means that, for example, I have an uncle who was a professional painter. I've never taken any lessons in painting or anything like that. But whenever I picked up a paintbrush, I could paint by osmosis. It was like it was already there. There are certain skill sets that people have that it comes as second nature, and we wonder, where does this come from? And if you start to do any type of genealogy, which is why Mormons are obsessive about that, it's because it's written in your DNA. Somewhere locked in your DNA is the memories of every ancestor you ever had. Every ability, every pain, every memory, everything that they experienced is in your DNA. It's just locked up. And when people have, near-death experiences and stuff like that, some of these things get unlocked, and they start to recall the memories that's in their DNA, and that's a contributing factor to reincarnation, genetic memory, and being able to remember. And, I know, me personally, I've gone through what's called the Kundalini. Are you aware of that?
I've heard the term, but I'm not aware of the specifics about it. But really quickly, another animal, just in case people don't think about this too much, that follows this kind of thing is a salmon. The way that salmon return to their home stream and everything else, I mean, they don't have maps or anything. Yeah. They absolutely do this, and during their travels, they travel to the same place where all of their ancestors traveled, for their mating season and all that. If you just look at the lifespan and the life cycle of a salmon, you can find evidence for what I think is genetic memory. So, go ahead.
And a part of the genetic memory and what the Kundalini is according to Hinduism, there's a serpent that's wrapped around your head, your throat chakra, 3.5 times, I believe it is. And me and you have talked about this process of internal alchemy of getting all your chakras to get turned on and to open up your third eye or your pineal gland.
Right.
And in Hinduism, it says that, basically there's this snake that is wrapped around your throat that keeps you locked in slavery. And a good way to really get that is to look up Plato's allegory of the cave. Mm-hmm. That's an excellent way to understand it. People who reach enlightenment, we could say enlightenment, we could say salvation, we can say the Kundalini, whatever. It's all the same thing. But it's this opening up of the spiritual eye. And people who are in our circles, they see images of the all-seeing eye, and they freak out, and they think, oh my God, that's the New World Order. No, it's talking about your pineal gland. Don't freak out. It's talking about opening that eye up so that you can be connected directly to the source, to divinity, without having some guy in a robe or some guy behind a pulpit dictating these things to you, so you can have experiential firsthand knowledge. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I got a couple of calls trying to join in here. I want to take them real quick before we actually get to the Holy Grail. So,
all right, no problem.
All right, guys. First, I got 478 on the line.
Can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
This is Judas.
Oh, hey, Judas. How you doing, man?
What's up? This is Chuck?
Yep.
All right. I'm only going to throw my idea in there with the reincarnation thing. Because to me, all right, I'm just going to jump right in there because I've been listening to the whole entire show and I think it's great. But with the whole entire idea saying that we're all souls that keep repeating the same thing in time over and over again, like, I must have been here, during the Egyptian days, or I feel a connection to that. Are you keeping up with me? You following me?
I am, yeah.
And, when people say that kind of stuff, well, I started looking into cymatica and consciousness and, also like the ancient, text of like the Mayans and the Mixtecs and all the stuff that you guys are talking about earlier. And a lot of the things that had been understood was that, it's a theory, is that maybe because we're all collectively a part of the collective consciousness all around us, when you start talking about kymatics and you were talking about how there is a female and a male part within us, you know what I'm saying? Well, that's the flora and the fauna, which ties in towards like the old ancient yin and yang theories. And keeping that stuff balanced is how you have like a sense of utopia and connection towards, the makeup of reality that's around us today, whether it be wars or chaos or a giving, loving, free utopia that's thriving, Mm-hmm. And so what the theory was is that because we're all connected, my daughter, when she picks up technology, it's like it's like me and you, when we learn how to do something so well, we become professionals at it. Well, my kid will just pick it up, and it's like she instinctively knows exactly what's going on. And so, to me, that's not really an old soul. That's somebody that's has like a DNA imprint of the past and all things to the present that is stuck within her mind and her conscious DNA. And, and then you started talking about the DNA within people and the genealogy within things. Well, you ever heard of the pi or the golden ratio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you know that's actually it's actually apparent in our DNA itself.
Right.
And so that's obviously, if anybody is understanding of this information, to me, that is a thumbprint.
The golden ratio has driven many a mathematicians insane.
It really has.
Yeah.
Because you can find it in everything. It's in music. It's in the stars. It's in the pyramids.
And you're dead on, and you bring a very interesting topic up. One of the misconceptions of reincarnation. Quantum physics is a factor too, and it's
to me they prove God is real, and that consciousness is what creates reality. So based off our intentions, our real true intent, that's why I believe that media and all that stuff is a fear propaganda, and as well as TV, kind of getting your consciousness to like prepare and start kind of developing this reality. Ebola, ISIS, war. Oh my God, no! And then it becomes dinner conversation.
Somebody has us on in the background though. It's feeding back a bit. So if you could either mute that or something. I think.
Nothing.
All right, 478. I think you got us on in the background, so you might want to tune that down because I can hear that, and I want everybody to be heard clearly.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you bring up a good point, and one of the things I do want to mention about reincarnation is that most people have this idea that it's linear. That if you incarnated in Egypt in whatever century, that you have to reincarnate continuously, in linear order, and that's not so. Your first incarnation could have been in the year 2114, and then your second incarnation could be in the year 33 AD. You can literally meet yourself in a different body today, and me being a spiritual person and having gone through the Kundalini, I've done that, which is a mind trip, by the way. But yeah, you don't necessarily, whenever you reincarnate, you don't do it in linear order from 30 AD to 40 AD to on and on and on. You can literally reincarnate in different time periods, and that explains what you were talking about. And you're absolutely right. I've seen children just pick up smartphones and work them better than me. It's like they know it. They knew it better than I did. It's amazing to see that. But
it's unbelievable how they pick it up, and it's almost like it was, as we go, and progress through things, there's going to be an evolution of man. Well, as I pay attention to astrology. I pay attention to just about everything because I believe everything's connected. When people start talking about multiple different conspiracies or other things, they don't realize there's another agenda. Every idea has stemmed from one idea. Okay.
And what you just said was funny, and this is a movie I highly recommend to everybody who is researching reincarnation. Is Cloud Atlas.
I'll check it out.
Please pick up Cloud Atlas. And when people viewed it, there was a 50-50 response. 50% of the people said, this is stupid, and then 50% of the people said, this is brilliant. But the movie Cloud Atlas really, really, really articulates what we're talking about.
Because it sounds like you have a couple different. That was another thing too. Like, in the chat room, we're talking about religion or whatever, and there's so many jokes or however you want to take it. Because really, to me, it's all a personal thing, and so it's all about comprehension. And consciousness. It's like the best way that I can explain it is I saw this video. This guy says if you have a golf ball sized consciousness, you have a golf ball sized understanding. But if we can expand that consciousness, we can expand our understanding. You read that book, you have more understanding of that book. And as you're reading it, you have more imagination on top of it to where you're filling in the missing pieces. Or there's other people that are completely just like forcing themselves to read it, trying to understand it to get a little bit of it. Or whatever. But my point is that if I think that's what they're attacking in our society is our conscience. If you can attack that in our consciousness, you can attack our understanding. You can attack the evolving of the entire. Because think of our mass culture. As much as the people listening right now, that whether they're brand new or not, they could be people being like, I absolutely understand what you're talking about, or the other people are brand new and they're like, wow, this guy's a nut. You go to a checkout lane, you start talking about this stuff, all right? They're not going to keep up, and they're almost going to shut down because they feel like they should know this information. You're making me feel stupid. So then they shut down, and then you're left, with the information alone. But that's the problem, because the person at your checkout lane represents all the people at the voting polls, all the people that are running the supposed governed by consent of the country. So
this is definitely part of the problem when it comes to information like this, because it is rather complex. And I mean, we could probably go over this discussion for hours on end. I mean, I'm cramming it into a 2-hour show tonight, but believe me, that this is something that's worthy of discussion for many, many shows.
It really is, because this is the breakthrough I think that our society's starting to reach. We have an empty void within, and the only thing that I can think of it is like the best that I ever saw was this guy that owned a TV broadcast station, and he came right out and he's like, hey, this guy just died, and he's like, we feed you lies, okay? You want to get the truth, you need to talk amongst yourselves. You need to go deep within yourself. And so, that's where you're going to find the connection that you are a part of everything around you, the earth, the people, not your computer, not your technological crazes. I'm talking about, what if all that stuff was gone? Who are you going to rely on? Because I don't see no love and no understanding of each other in this world. I see division everywhere I go.
Yeah.
We're all ready to argue.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I try, and that's why I do presentations like this, is to try and get people to expand their considerations anyways, so that they can possibly expand their minds. 478, you've been on there waiting, and you've been patient. What do you want to add in?
Well, I would just like to go back to the conversation you and Daniel began with. First of all, I'd just like to note that the term Elohim is not in the context. And first, Daniel, are you a student of Hebrew?
I speak English.
Oh, okay. Well, I would be sure that you would actually study intensely before you went delivering speeches on the radio. The word Elohim, actually, when it's surrounded by singular nouns and verbs, it means plurality of power. Like, all power belongs to the Lord our God. All majesty, the supreme, it's a multitude of power, not in actual plurality as far as in numbers. Now, as far as you said that between the ages of 12 and 30, Yeshua was actually, where was he actually at? What part of the world?
Well, according to documents, he traveled to Ireland, to England, to Kashmir, to Nepal.
Okay, did he fly there?
Like as in on a first class
like
plane?
Superman. I mean, did he fly there? Or was it like something off Star Trek? He had his little beacon and popped up there.
I think the technology at the time were his sandals.
Well, right, and you do agree that he was without sin?
Define sin.
Well, I would like to actually. You answer the question. Was he with sin or without sin? I mean, if you believe the Holy Bible in it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I believe the Holy Bible is inspired. Yeah.
All right. Well, would multiple writers all say the same thing, and all of them be wrong, like they're in cahoots?
I believe he was without sin, just as me and you are without sin, because I believe in the Lord.
It says John 8:46.
Well, I believe
John
in the Lord.
8:46. Yeshua asked him, "Which one of you convinces me of sin?" No one said anything.
Hold on. Let's listen to Daniel first. Let's listen to what he had to say. You asked him a question.
Yeah.
I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, the person you call Jesus or Yeshua, was without sin, and he said, if you believe on me, you're without sin too, so I'm without sin. How about you?
Well, who tells us what sin is? Do you tell yourself what sin is, or do you allow God to tell you what sin is? Because if you choose your own sin and what sin is, then you've just become your own God. Can you tell me who defines sin? Is it me and you, or is it God?
What's your definition of sin?
I go by what the Bible says my definition of sin is.
And what would that be?
Well, blasphemy is a sin, which is calling yourself a god, for one.
Well, I would agree with that. That is blasphemy. But in 1 John, chapter 3, verse 4, it says, everyone who gets sinning is violating the law, the Torah. So, therefore, to say Yeshua was without sin, he would have had to obey all of that.
He followed all the commandments.
Exactly, you're right.
Yeah.
And in Leviticus chapter 23,
okay,
the Lord gives...
Whoa. In the Gospel of Thomas, now, in the Gospel of Thomas, it states that Jesus, or Yeshua, killed a young boy. Is it okay if I quote something outside the 66 books, or are we staying within the 66 books?
We're going to stay within the 66 books, because the Gospel of Thomas has been disproven.
I'd like to have an explanation as to why we're staying within the 66 books. Because you say so?
Because none of the Word of God contradicts each other. None of it. You have 66 different books by over 40 different authors, and they all coincide with each other. So we're going back to the fact that I agree he did not sin.
So I can't use any of the Gnostic Gospels in a conversation with you.
Will you please let me finish my thought?
Sure.
Okay. So, if he is the other person on the radio show, I'm sorry.
I'm just listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a good thing he did obey all the commandments. And in those commandments, in Leviticus 23, it said that they had to be in Jerusalem at the place of a holy convocation together. And that would be during Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Shavuot, which is Pentecost, and then you had Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, and then you had 10 days after that, you had the Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and then 5 days after that, you have the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, for Yeshua to have traveled to Ireland, and then travel to Tibet to, be Isis or whatever you want to call him, with a straight paved road would have took him over a month. And with the terrain the way it was, I did read this up. I did my study, my research on this. It would have took 4 to 6. It would have took 4 to 6.
Let me finish. Go ahead.
It would have took 4 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So if he studied with those people, it could only been maybe 3 hours before he had to turn around and go back to Jerusalem. That's why I asked you if he was fine or not. Because that's the only way he possibly could have not broken the Torah.
So what you're saying is that it was impossible for him to have made those trips.
Was Yeshua God?
Is that correct?
I'm asking you, is Yeshua God?
was it impossible for him to make the trips that I have allegedly?
I will not be baited into a trapped question. The reason why I asked you to begin with, if he flew, your exact words were his sandals.
Okay. All I know is
okay, so therefore he did not do those things. So he was not ISIL. And
okay.
just in on this one.
So
you have to study the scripture. You should not bring up scripture in your presentation if you're not familiar with all of what you're talking about.
What you're trying to tell me?
It refers to Melchizedek.
Okay. What you're telling me
in comparison? Read it in context.
Listen, pal.
Okay.
You're like now. I'm jumping on your reincarnation bandwagon, and you said that Yeshua was Melchizedek reincarnated. That is not the way the context reads. It reads is the fact that there is no record of Melchizedek's
birth
or
you're
death.
talking about reincarnation now, and what I wanted to know, because we need to stay on point, not go down rabbit trails. It was impossible for him to make the trips that I alleged, but it's possible for him to raise his dead body from the dead and then fly up into the heavens and appear to people for 40 days and 40 nights in different bodies. That's completely understandable and logical and possible. He can do that, but he can't.
Well, if you believe in Christophanies, you can believe the fact that it was God that wrestled with Jacob, came down as a man. So it's not completely against Scripture. That's not Scripture contradicting Scripture, my friend. You're saying that you can die and come back as somebody else. God, my friend, never died, except for in the person of Jesus, and he was resurrected. He could have took the form of a chicken to talk to those guys on the Emmaus Road.
Well, let me ask you this: What
God is God, my friend.
What do I need to convert to?
There are no multiple gods, and Jesus, Yeshua. I don't know. What does Yeshua mean?
What do I need to believe? Just tell me what I need to convert to.
You don't need to convert to anything. You need to believe God, and that means trusting in Him, committing in Him. You do not need to follow Him and then throw Him away. It's not as difficult as you make it. And you make it very difficult.
In
defense, confuse your readers, listeners.
Hold on. In defense of Daniel, let me just say that he is not somebody who has thrown God away. He just has
Trust me and my friend have had a personal relationship our entire lives. And I love Daniel. And I want him to come back to what he began with, because he could be more powerful in the truth than the deception he's been deceived with, my friend. And that's what I'm going to leave it on. And I love you, Daniel. God bless you, man.
Namaste.
Wow.
That was quite the take on there.
Yeah, it was. And so, Daniel, now that you have a chance to speak to that.
Yeah.
This is what I would have to say. Okay? If that brings him peace and it makes him treat his fellow man, with love and compassion, more power to him. I'm not trying to convert anybody to any church. I'm not trying to force anybody. I say what I say out of firsthand experience. That's what I say.
I feel you on that. That's that personal thing again.
No, exactly. And this is exactly how I see the world, again, is that this is all obviously subject to everybody's interpretation, and if you want to absolutely, believe that the scriptures are the word of God and cannot be contradictory and are absolutely without any sort of flaw whatsoever, and you believe that the Council of Nicaea, in fact, was an inspired act of God as well, that's fine. But
it's another thing. I mean, Chuck, it's another thing where, one of the points I was trying to make right there was, why you're trying to bring me into your arena. You're telling me that I am not allowed to bring up any other scriptures or any other text besides the 66 books.
What about the Book of Enoch?
Yeah, the Book of Enoch. That's what my novel is based off, the Book of Enoch.
I love that book.
You know, so I'm not allowed. People of a organized religious mindset don't allow me to go outside the arena that they build, and that's not fair. It's not fair for you to be able to quote. You can quote 50 scriptures to me and try to prove your point, but when I bring up something that's extra biblical or beyond the 66 books, oh no, the Council of Nicaea didn't approve that, so therefore your point is null and void. Well, that's not fair. And who gave you those ideas to begin with? Was it your preacher? Was it your pastor? Who gave you? Who told you that we have to stay within the 66 books? It was somebody else. It wasn't you. Right. You are just following somebody in a robe. You're following somebody on a pole.
This is what I've done a lot of studies on this, and I would
Judas, you go ahead and make that comment, but I do want to get back on track with this with what we were getting to with Daniel right after, because I know you're going to find it really fascinating, and everybody else will too. So go ahead and say what you were going to say.
I want to go back to what you were talking about originally, because one thing I first heard you talking about was how the original name for Jesus was Yeshua and God's name was Yahweh, and the reason why these names are so significant is because the original text of the Bible was written in Hebrew. And Hebrew, back to Kymatica in the cymatic effects, has actually effect on the media around us, the actual conscious media that's around us. So when you speak things, you actually kind of speak life into life or life into death. You see what I'm saying? So they manipulated our language into the English language. But going into the Bible, when you read it, certain things can be contradictory, but you have to really read the whole thing. Like in the beginning, God talks about how you should not worship other gods, do not make engraven images, respect the Sabbath day, love your brother, you know what I'm saying? Don't cover your name. These are all really good moral principles that any moral person with integrity could live with. And so if you really read them, but one of the things that people got upset about was the sacrifices and killing people and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's why when Jesus came, or Yeshua, I don't want to get all controversial with people, but he came to fulfill the law by basically saying that I come so you no longer have to do sacrifices, still respect the commandments, okay, believe and have faith in me, keep the Sabbath day holy, okay, don't, worship engraven images and all these other things, and then he died and resurrected and, went to heaven. And then some people will say, well, that's astrology stuff. Oh, it all boils down to astrology. You're worshiping the sun and the stars and the blah, blah, blahs. But again, it falls back in the Bible where it says not to follow the stars, for that is man-made understandings, and not to lean on man's understanding. So again, when I sit there and tell you how I think it is, and you tell me or whatever, that's us leaning on our own understandings. What we need to do is kind of lean on the spirit that's within that can resonate with people the best that we can. And what I've found is that we don't keep the Sabbath day holy. Most people have a cross on their wall, which is an engraven image, and all these other crazy things. But again, who am I to tell people how to live their life? You see what I'm saying? So
here's what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is, as soon as I get off this radio show, I expect a friend request from you, because you're on point.
You're both friends. You're both friends of mine, so you can cross each other on my friends list if you want.
So I better see it. But to back you up, I'll go to Romans 14. Okay, yeah. Romans 14 says this. It says, "Him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations. For one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs. Let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not, and let not him which eateth not judge him that eateth. For God hath received him. Who art thou to judge another man's servant? To his own master he standeth or falleth. Yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth God thanks, and he that eateth not to the Lord, he eateth not, and giveth God thanks. For none of us liveth to himself, and no man dieth to himself. For whether we live unto the Lord, and whether we die unto the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ both died and rose and revived, that he might be Lord both of the dead and the living. But why dost thou judge thy brother? Or why dost thou set at naught thy brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give account to himself to God. Let us not therefore judge one another any more, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. I know, and I am persuaded by the Lord Yeshua, that there is nothing unclean of itself. But
now,
to him
everything
that
you're talking about, though, is so important, though, because you're talking about politics. You're talking about our leaders, the people that are teachers. You're talking about the truth being completely muffled and manipulated. And supposedly, let's say this is, because I want to talk in the aspect of because I'm a faithful person and I'm a believer, but I also like to remember the time when I didn't believe, because that, to me, is the threshold that I walk through with conviction. So how are you going to look at somebody and start from the beginning of the story in the middle of the story? You can't, you got to kind of jump into it. And so, if anybody really got that, I'm glad this is recorded too. And I want to go ahead and talk about Romans 12:4, when it says, For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we being many are one body in Christ, and everyone members one another. So that basically means that, hey, we all have our own understandings, but as long as we're walking with the light of God in us, then we should be able to have the information to share. And I want to make one thing key. When I sit there and say Yahweh or God or Lord, I believe in the creator of all things. Because when I get back to that golden ratio and the consciousness and the DNA thumbprint of some kind of, monstrous, inalienable, being, that left his thumbprint behind in every single living thing in this world, I can't deny that there's God. Or a creator of all things. So,
Judas, let me finish.
I gotta go too, though. But go ahead.
Let me finish the passage. It says in 14:20, it says, For meat destroy not the work of God. All things indeed are pure. But it is evil for that man who eateth with offense. It is good neither to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby thy brother stumbleth, or is offended, or is made weak. Hast thou faith? Have it to thyself before God. Happy is he that condemneth not himself in that thing which he alloweth. And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin. What Romans 14 is saying is make up your own religion. That's what it's saying.
Well, it's saying don't judge people. It's really, to me, what it's saying. It's not saying make up your own religion. It's saying you know what's right if you know the word of God. But you can't go around judging people if they don't know, because there's a time and a place for everything. So, that's what I take out of it. And again, that's that private interpretation thing, because my dad goes to church on a Sunday. I worship God on a Saturday because that's the Sabbath day. That's the seventh day, right? You're supposed to rest on the seventh day and worship God there. That's even what Jesus said. But my dad says no. And he uses, it was Galatians or whatever, or Corinthians, I think. I can't remember exactly what it was. But he was basically saying that, he's using that as what Paul said, that he can go and worship on a Sunday. What it really says is, judge not he who worship on holy days and Sundays or these other days, because the Pope is the ones that changed all these holy days and saint days and, praying to dead people and all these things,
Well, we can say this. I mean, anybody could take Scripture and use it to manipulate the minds of others. I could take two verses right now, and I could say, I could take one passage that says Judas went out and hung himself, and then I can link it with another one that says, Go ye therefore and do likewise.
Yeah, exactly. And you got people hanging themselves. Hey, if Jesus knew he was going to die and he could have prevented it, wasn't that a suicide too? See, that's another thing. It was a sacrifice, an ultimate sacrifice.
I am so glad you said that, because I have mentioned that to people before. I said Jesus committed suicide. If you stop and think about it, he knew. You know, so
it was sacrifice. And he said, Father, forgive them for what they know not what they do. Because we don't know, okay? If we always leaning on the understandings of a man, we're never going to understand God. You know, if all I follow is money and my job and trying to say that I'm living right, I'm absolutely living farther from the truth than ever. You go ahead and try to live off the land, okay, and fish and depend on nature and tell me how you feel, okay? You'll feel closer to God than you ever were. And I want to hear what you guys' next segment was. But I will say one more thing. How can anybody say that they don't believe in a God that doesn't believe in them and not feel that it would be mutual?
Yeah.
Very good point. You know, and you can hear how overwhelmed I am, right?
I apologize. It's one of those conversations. I love it.
It's great though, but this is the kind of conversation that needs to be had. And meanwhile, remember, I'm the guy who identifies himself constantly as not a Christian, you know. But still, and I know, Judas, you're probably not too happy, but I also do relate that all of this stuff is also astrological, is also of other religions, and in fact, if you sort of peel back the layers behind many of the religions as they stand now, and the ancient religions as well, you find that there is a universal truth contained within.
There is. That's what I mean. That's Gnosticism. And that goes all the way back to where he said that Jesus was also originally a Gnostic. Gnosticism was one of the most ancient religions next to an animism, which is the connection to everything. We're all connected, you know? And I'm more leaning towards, I'm more of a Gnostic and an animist than I am to consider myself a Christian, because I always respect God. I believe in Jesus and have faith in him, but I worship one true creator, as always. I don't have a cross. I don't go to confession. There's really no church for me. It's sitting in a room like this, talking to people about it. That's church for me.
This is church. It says, where two or more are gathered together in my name, there I will be in the midst of them. This is church.
That's what church actually is, yes.
And what we're talking about is really not just religion. We're talking about deep philosophy. We're actually thinking right now, you know, taking theory, because whatever theory is becomes reality, you know. I'll post on your wall, Chuck, science secrets kept hidden, the secret science kept hidden, where Albert Einstein and all these great scientists sat in a room and they realized every theory and idea they had, they were starting to prove it true. So they started to wonder, maybe everything we're thinking is conspiring into reality. Right. And so that was like the big mind-blowing thing, you know, that we're all connected. You know, and so if you got everybody mired in the mind of money, everybody obeying all these invisible laws and boundaries, me dictating your life, that's a religion in its own. Democracy. 51% decide overrule majority overrule, buddy. Okay, you can't smoke weed. Yeah, I got something for you. Okay, it's called sovereignty. Okay,
right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay, but I do want to get back to Daniel's original presentation.
I want to hear all that stuff. I don't want to take up any more time. I just wanted to get in my opinion. I felt like it kind of needed to be heard in, many ears, and the whole entire round table of the discussion of what we're talking about.
Right, and I appreciate it. And you gotta come on and do another full 2 hours with me sometime, Judas, too.
I'm looking forward to it. I have a lot underway, tons of studies, lots of research. I can't wait.
Excellent.
Chuck, to tell you the truth, this is the first time I've ever met Judas, but I'll tell you what, I'd love to come on with him, because I believe me and him would play some serious mental tennis.
That would be excellent. But really, Judas, when he gets rolling, man, I have to sit back.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a breath of fresh air, because like whenever me and you met, it was like, oh my God, there's another guy out there who's not insane. That and now I'm like, oh yeah, there's this other guy. Okay, great. So yeah, we got to get together. This is gonna be great.
Absolutely. regardless of whatever, I want to give you credit, Charles. And no matter what you think, there's at times people be like, oh, I'm not a Christian or whatever. You believe in something good, okay? And you believe in a creator, right? And all being a creator. How the hell did we get here? Nobody can answer that, all right? And there's no man on this earth that should decide that theory in its own to claim rule over you all of a sudden. Like, how is his idea greater than yours? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that again is the truth being muffled, in the world and the paradigm of the flesh. All right. But when you look in the spirit, and I'm talking about the real spirit, you completely disconnected from all your materialistic objects, your job, your money, your cars, all your desires, and you really just connect to the universe and all things, the whole thing, the big pulsing, massing thing, dude, then that's when you start kind of coming up with the real truth of things. Take a walk down the road. You ever done that? It's like therapy. That to me is you connecting to the vibration of the earth. And there's always remedy in that. And that's why I think if people, if they stepped away from work a little bit in these daily routines, they would start getting more in towards the ethereal minded, more creative, more, what is it? Right-sided brain instead of left-sided, and, you'd see more of a evolving culture. Instead, we're stepping into a culling, they're getting rid of the vaccine, everybody, woo! I don't know what to say. I try to warn people all the time. Is it really working? I don't know. It's almost like, okay, bring it on, buddy.
Well, see, that's exactly why I do these shows, Judas, because the thing is, this is an evolutionary process for me. I'm on the journey. I have not reached a destination in my mind, and I don't like labels. So I don't attach a label to myself, and this is part of the exploration, let's just say. And believe me, I've been in a lot of different directions regarding this, and some of them were rather dark paths to have tread upon. But the reality is that the world is very textured and loaded with so many different interpretations that we could each have our own individual interpretation, which seems to be at odds with everyone else's. But in reality, at the end of the day, when we boil it all down, I bet you it just about comes down to the same thing. And that's what it is. And I'm still on that road walking.
Look, we're brothers, and I could tell right now, like me, you, and Daniel right now, we could sit in a room and talk all day, right? But then there's other people that would want to slit our throat right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want to kill us, And that's where I see the world right now. There's no love, in people's conversation anymore. They're so quick to not listen and just so quick to respond, And so when people are hearing what you want to say, what you're saying, they automatically want to backlash at you or say, oh, I don't believe a single thing you say. It's all manipulated, or, they immediately shut down. They look for any excuse they've ever heard in their life to regurgitate in their mind again, that's all with the indoctrination process of our childhood and schooling and parents and all the other shit. Excuse my French, born in Canada. But, that's why I feel like I can resonate with what you're saying, but when you try to get the whole entire world in the same kind of leverage, what I mean by the culling and that we're, and all these bad things are happening is because history needs to repeat itself. If we do come to this kind of awareness, the government will have no power. We will be able to govern ourselves. We can self-counsel ourselves. All the medicines and the counselors and the psychologists and all this, the empire of bullshit will crumble. Okay,
dude,
people
Judas.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Are you absolutely positive that me and you are not fathered by the same person?
You see what I mean? Look, if I've accomplished nothing else tonight, I put you two together, and I bet you guys don't even need me to do this presentation.
No.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get out.
By the way, you're on like 50 government watch lists as we speak. So if you hear clicks on the phone,
you think you're alone?
No, I know I'm not. It's great.
Listen, I don't want to know anybody who isn't on those 50 lists.
I'll see you at Camp FEMA. No.
Not me, brother.
No,
never.
I'm going out with the pestilence. No. No.
Wow.
All right, I'm just joking. I got to throw it out there. A little biblical humor in there, Hey, you don't think God's got humor in him? Look, He created everybody else, right?
It's funny you say that. I wrote an article about a year ago about me and Patrick and Curtis, and essentially it was about reincarnation and how we went to the altar of God, and I wrote this silly little funny thing, and about us talking to God and him playing PlayStation 5 and drinking caramel macchiatos, and there were so many people who were like, that's so blasphemous. How can you say that about God? And I go, you know what? God gave me my sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I always said this right here. If there is a God, then he must have the... I'm 5'5" and 145 pounds soaking wet with combat boots on, dude. And I always said, if there is a God, he must have the understandings with the laws of physics and lunacy. Because if I was any bigger, I'd kill us all.
Yeah.
And words from a small guy always getting pushed around. I must have a big guy's mouth, you know. But I mean, like, you always see the big guy. Nobody ever pushes him around or second. They're afraid of him. They're afraid to, second guess him. But it's always the little guy that's always got to get pushed around, always smothered and oppressed, Yeah. And so I was like, man, if I was just a little bigger, yeah.
Well, see, I definitely appreciate it, Judas. I'm hoping that we can cram in Daniel's story here at the end.
I'm going to go. I'm sorry.
No, it's not a problem, brother. I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad you called in. And I'm telling you, we're going to have to do a 2-hour show soon. I mean, this coming week if you want.
Yeah, sounds great. Just hit me up, and I'll let the fam know so that everybody's prepared for it. And, yeah, man, I got a lot of stuff to talk about, actually. I think it'll be great. Especially on these lines. And you know what? It'll be like an extenuation of what we're talking about tonight and into this stuff. Because, we are creating our reality, and chaos is all you see. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you guys go, and we'll talk about it another day. Nice meeting you, Daniel, and take care. And thanks for listening.
It's been an honor. Been an honor.
Thank you, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Take care, Judas. So... Look, and I know God has a sense of humor because I'm here. So,
often I've said that.
That's all there is to it right there. That's the quick answer. But okay. Now I realize that we run you down on time here, but the thing is, definitely I think it was worth it to get that input and to hear from Judas. Judas is always interesting. Of course, your other friend that seems to know you from elsewhere. Had some interesting remarks, and we get to see what it's like when someone is confined to a certain set of rules, let's just say, regarding their belief, and they're not exploring. They have fully embraced a particular set of beliefs, let's just say. But I wanted to finally touch upon what the Holy Grail is and what it is you found, if we could. I don't know if we have enough time left, but you think you can fit it in?
I'll try to condense it the best that I possibly can. It's something that's quite mind-blowing to me. Me and you have talked about this off and on the radio. Holy Grail, if you get to the Da Vinci Code and pay attention to that type of thing, it talks about, Gnostics talk about Yeshua actually having a wife, Mary the Magdalene. Something that is, kind of poo-pooed about organized religion. They don't want to believe. They would like to believe that Yeshua was a virgin, but the Bible says that he was tempted in every way known to man, as we were. And, well, that can't be possible unless he was married and tempted with infidelity and things of that nature. But there's this issue in Orthodox Christianity that somehow or another he wasn't a man in the sense that we are. You know what I mean? If you kind of watch the Da Vinci Code and read what Dan Brown wrote, and look at those types of things, it talks about Mary the Magdalene. The Gnostic Gospels talk about Mary the Magdalene. And essentially what they say is that you had these two souls. One was born to a very wealthy family, and that was Mary. And Mary was born naturally intuitive. And on the other opposite spectrum, if you picture the yang, Yeshua, or Jesus, was born to a poor family. And was not intuitive. He had to learn his divinity. He had to come to an understanding of his divinity, whereas Mary the Magdalene knew it from the beginning. And according to the Gnostic Gospels, she was sold off into an arranged marriage with a man who did not love her, and she was abused, but she attempted to love him. And, after so much abuse, she plotted to have him assassinated. So she did. And this tore at her conscience in a horrible way. And she went on this path to where she was sold into prostitution and things of that nature, but she would have visions of a man in Israel that she was supposed to meet. On the opposite spectrum, you had, Yeshua, who was born to a poor family. He was born materialistic. He had to learn his own divinity. And it was a dance, a cosmic dance of yin and yang, of the two of them gaining experience that they would bring together. And he would have visions of meeting this woman. Well, when you look at the Bible, you have the instance where the Pharisees and the Sadducees bring Mary Magdalene to Yeshua, and they say, we caught her in the act. She's a whore, right? And they had stones to stone her, and he knelt down. He wrote in the sand, and whenever it was done, he said, is there anybody that's here that condemns you? And she said, no. And he said, well, I condemn you not either. Well, throughout history, in symbology, you have, if you look at a Freemason symbol, you have what's called the compass and the square, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the compass and the square represent the masculine and the feminine aspects of God. Right. The triangle that points upward represents the masculine, the blade, as Dan Brown describes it.
Right, and the V shape, symbolizes the feminine, and also the vessel.
The vessel. Right. In the Bible, it's called the matrix. Mm-hmm. It's called the matrix. So this is symbology that's heavily rife in Hollywood, in Scripture, and things of that nature. And for me, it's been the past 2 years of my life have been a very personal journey of self-enlightenment. I mean, you've talked about divorce. Mm-hmm. I was married for 13 years. And when I speak about this, I don't mean to be malicious in any type of way, but what I say it because it's my own personal story. But, I was married in the Orthodox Church, and though I love my ex-wife, very much, she's a great person, there was something missing, Well,
and you know what? If you were the kind of man who could go through a divorce and be left with no malice whatsoever, I would definitely start to call you a liar anyway. So there's always going to be some negativity attached to that. It is the reality, and it doesn't matter if it's a secular marriage, one which is had in the church in the eyes of whatever cult or what. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, when these things split, this happens, man.
Yeah, you go through a crazy spell and things like that. But
that's for sure.
There's this notion that I started to research, shortly before my divorce, and it's this notion of what's called a twin flame. Mm. I don't know if you've done any research into it, but there's this concept that since we've entered the age of Aquarius, something called the twin flames are appearing, and it's essentially what this. I don't want to say teaching because it's not a teaching, but it's a philosophy or an idea. It's that whenever you first incarnated, you were split into two, a male and a female, a yin and a yang. Mm. And the two of you experienced bliss and, all that good stuff in your first incarnation, and then both of you as a soul contract decided to separate and to dance throughout history. Like a DNA strand, or a yin yang, or however you want to gain knowledge, to gain experience,
or like the Greek concept of the being is born with 4 legs and 4 arms and split, and therefore becomes a soul mate, one to another, things like that as well.
Yeah, well, you have soul mates, you have soul groups, and then you have twin shadows and twin flames. Mm. And essentially, basically, what twin flames is it's you and the opposite sex in a different body. Mm-hmm. And whenever you meet, you only meet whenever you reach your last incarnation, when you reach enlightenment, the two of you, and then you come together, and it's supposed to be this most profound experience. Right. And when I was going through my spiritual walk. While I was married, this issue came up, and we don't have time to talk about the Kundalini, but it's basically a way of seeing into the spiritual realm, to see things that other people can't see. Mm-hmm. But, this is what kind of led me on to this trail, or this path, that there was somebody out there that was me in a female body, that had the same experiences, the same pain, had went through centuries of lifetimes garnering and gathering the same thing. And this person was out there. And according to the teachings of, the twin flame, you're supposed to have a sense when this person arrives.
Mm.
And, when I married my first wife, I, meant every word of my vows, meant everything, did everything. I was faithful to the end. Our marriage ended rather messily. Ended up with me with some bad stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Bad stuff. Ended up getting stabbed a few times. That was fun. But that opened me up to the ideals of death and the illusion of death. Mm-hmm. And that death doesn't really exist. There's something called the initiation of the pyramid. But long and the short of it is that, for 2 years, since, my divorce was put through, I was single and celibate. Never touched another woman in any type of a way. But here recently, and like you said, I went missing for a little bit, something very, very profound happened to me. And I hope and I think that it's going to happen to other people that are listening, is that I felt that there was something big about to happen to me. And that's why I cite the movie Cloud Atlas. But here recently, something happened to me that was so profound. I started going through my old journals. I kept journals since I was like 13. And I kept those journals and started rereading them. And I started to see patterns and cycles in my life. And when I go through them, my first true love was a girl named Sarah. Mm-hmm. And she gave me this ring, this opal ring, had a heart, right? And I remember whenever me and her split up when I was 14 or whatever it was for some stupid reason, I took the ring and gave it to my mom. And she held it for years. And recently, since my divorce went through, I lost everything. I lost my house, my bank account, my car, my clothes, everything. I just was determined to go on this spiritual journey because I felt that something powerful was about to happen. So I forsook everything. But it slowly started to come back to me, like from the book of Job. Everything that was taken from him was given back to him twice. Mm-hmm. And this ring just showed up, out of the blue. Out of the blue, this ring showed up. And so I put it on my finger, and anybody who's seen pictures of me knows that I wear a lot of jewelry and everything means things. And part of my typical meditation was that, there's a park and a trail that's right down the road from my house, and I'll walk that trail in meditation. And one day I just woke up, or I didn't wake up, I didn't sleep for a few days, but I just knew that something was about to happen to me. Something was about to change me forever. And, the past 2 years of my life, having gone through a divorce and having lost everything and going through the emotional turmoil of that, I just felt that something was about to happen. And I remember that morning when the sun came up, I had intended to go down to the local park and take pictures and video for the website, just dailies is what we call it. And I got to the entrance of the trail, and this young black lady was walking towards me with a chihuahua. Now, I used to have a chihuahua named Cisco, and they looked identical, and I had to put that dog down, a few years ago. And this dog was an identical twin. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could pass for this chihuahua. And so I knew the universe was telling me, okay, you have to stop, you have to talk to this person. And this person's name was very similar to my ex-wife, which I thought was ironic. And I said, we talked for a minute. And I said, I had a dog that looked exactly like your dog. And we talked, and I showed her some pictures from my cell phone. And of all the rings that were on my finger, she pointed to the one ring that this girl, Sarah, gave me. And she said, who gave you that? Or, where did you get that ring? I said, well, actually, this ring was given to me by my first, true love. Her name was Sarah. And she goes, oh, okay, And that was the end of that. And I thought that was strange, And I kept walking down the trail. Now, I have a Zen garden in my backyard that's made up of different types of pebbles and stones from all over the world. And at this local park, there's a stone pile. And most of the pebbles are made of the pebbles that are in my Zen garden. I took a few pictures and took some video, and then I just laid down in the stone pile and was filming the sky, the clouds moving. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, these two beautiful little girls Madeline and Penelope come running up into the stone pile, and they come straight to me. It was the most amazing thing, and everybody who knows me knows that I've always wanted a daughter, and that was kind of taken from me. That opportunity was taken from me.
Right.
But here these two little girls come running up, and then their mother comes down, and she sits down with a pen and a piece of paper, and these little girls are teaching me about photosynthesis. And I'm like, what 4-year-old knows about photosynthesis? And it was a surreal moment, very, very surreal. And when the girls went to go play, I started talking to their mother, and it was just this knowing, this instantaneous knowing. It's very, very hard to describe, but it took me back to the whole teachings on the twin flame, that you have a part of your soul in another body, a feminine and a masculine, a yin and a yang. Mm-hmm. And it took all of about 2 seconds after she and I locked eyes, where it was like, I know who you are. She was the exact same way. And since this happened, both of our lives have accelerated in such a way. You could probably tell in my voice I have like a spring in my step. It's a little bit more excited, a little bit more fulfilled, a little bit more impassioned than it normally has been. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, within the span of a week, the universe just moved to where it was like, you guys know who each other are. You've been together for centuries. You've been waiting for each other for centuries. And she knew it, I knew it, and our memories are starting to come back from different past lives, from different incarnations. And, one of the most interesting nights that we had was, we started looking at each other's scars on our bodies, and we have some of the identical same scars. Our feet are exactly the same. We have the same teeth. As a matter of fact, she left earlier so I could do the show so the girls wouldn't interrupt, and I picked up her MP3 player, or her iPod. And you could not, like, if you were to pick up her iPod and my MP3 player, you wouldn't know the difference. It's the same songs that are on there, And it's been such a profound experience for me. And that's why I've been missing for a couple of weeks, because we've been in this kind of a honeymoon phase. And when you start to get into the whole teachings of twin flames, it's for the uplifting of humanity. And something that we've, been focusing on is how are we going to bring this knowledge to other people so that they can experience this too, this healing,
right.
As individuals and as a nation and as a world. And she's probably listening right now, so, probably blushing. But that was the profound thing to me. And it was, I found my holy grail, this vessel, this yin to my yang, this Mary Magdalene to my Yeshua, this perfect balance. And it's something that I hope that everybody who's listening, a lot of people who are into this type of information are going through a lot of trouble, a lot of turmoil, financially, emotionally, relationship-wise. A lot of people who are spiritually inclined have been going through a tribulation, and this is a part of it. So, I wanted to tell that. I've been so excited about it, and there's not enough time in the universe for me to be able to explain the full story. But it was just so odd, because one of the things that my father and I would do was play poker. And the last game he ever played, I cleaned him out of $27 worth of poker chips. And one day I was actually walking down to go meditate, and there was this abandoned house. A song came on called Yesterday by a group called Atmosphere. And it's a son talking to his father. And I knew that I had to go into this house, and I did. And I found poker chips, the exact same poker chips that me and my father played with, and that I had put in his coffin before he was buried. And so I collected them all. And the actual picture that I was taking before Sarah and her girls showed up was a picture of these poker chips. And it was just all this synchronicity, and the universe like bringing all of it together to make some type of a puzzle piece. And a lot of my friends have poker chips that I give them, and I bless them and pray over them and give them to them for good fortune and protection, things of that nature. But I remember reaching in my bag, and I was sitting down, the first time that we met, And, I prayed over it, and she has a story that's not mine to tell, but it's very, very similar to mine. And she reached down and grabbed the poker chip. And from then on, it was just this, it was almost something that I said on the show the other day was that, people get confused whenever they hear Jesus or Yeshua say, "My Father who art in heaven." I personally don't believe he was talking about the supreme God. I believe he was talking about Joseph. Joseph isn't mentioned after 12 years old, and it's my belief that he died. And he was guiding his son from the other side. And I believe that that's what happened with me, and that's what led me to her, and that's my holy grail.
Wow. I'll tell you, Daniel, we're going to have to expand upon this another night because I really I want to hear more about this. And it is remarkable that one can find these things and find the synchronicity in the world. There are still bright spots out there. It's not all doom and gloom. And I want to thank everybody for listening to the Ochelli Effect tonight on UCY.tv. And you can find Daniel's work at zeninthecar.com. Okay, and I know it seems a little rushed here toward the end, but as usual, I don't know how to manage time. And something always seems to happen to cause the show to get pushed, in another direction. But you know what? I found it fascinating nonetheless. And I hope that you enjoyed talking on here tonight. And I definitely hope that you'll come back again and we can talk about exactly this twin flame concept and how many different ways this goes. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. The frogs are still boiling. Ribbit, ribbit.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, crystals and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to